Welcome back to The Crime Couch. I'm Emma Blake, a former criminal prosecutor, and today we're delving into a case that sent shockwaves across an entire nation. What started as an ordinary afternoon jog for a young, vibrant woman ended in unimaginable horror.
And I'm Jason Reed, a retired homicide detective. This case, Emma, truly stands out for its sheer brutality and the almost inexplicable nature of the crime itself. It's a stark reminder that even in broad daylight, evil can emerge from the shadows.
Ashling Murphy was just 23 years old, a beloved primary school teacher from Blueball, near Tullamore, Ireland. She had just landed her dream job at Thurrow National School in 2021, and by all accounts, she was living life to the fullest. Ashling was incredibly passionate about traditional Irish music, often playing the tin whistle or fiddle with her father, who played the banjo. She even took younger musicians under her wing, sharing her love for the art.
Ashling was also in a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, Ryan Casey. They'd known each other since they were teenagers, and despite a brief separation in their youth, they reconnected and were inseparable. Ryan described her as having the most comforting smile and infectious laugh. They were making plans to build a life together, a dream house, marriage, and family. It paints a picture of a truly promising future, tragically cut short.
On January 12th, 2022, Ashling, a fitness enthusiast, decided to go for a jog after work. She left school just after 3 p.m., heading towards a canal walkway in Tullamore known as Fiona's Way. It was a clear, unseasonably warm day, perfect for an outdoor run. She even told her mother where she was going, and her mother, Kathleen, expressed a slight worry, suggesting she jog elsewhere. Ashling, with a hug and a, "Aw, Mom, I'm 23 years old, love you," headed out.
It was around 3:15 p.m. when Ashling, jogging along the Grand Canal, was ambushed. Two women, jogging on the opposite side of the canal, were the first to notice something was terribly wrong. They heard what sounded like a woman crying from the wooded area next to the path and saw a bicycle on the side. Believing someone had fallen, they approached. What they witnessed was chilling. A man cowering over Ashling, pinning her down. The jogger described seeing a small necklace around the woman's neck with the name Ashling on it.
The attacker, later identified as Josef Puska, snarled at the witnesses, telling them to go away. They observed Ashling fighting back, twisting and turning every part of her body, desperately trying to get free. But she was no longer making a sound. With no phones on them and no one else around, the two women screamed that they would call the Gardaí, the Irish police, and ran to the nearest house for help.
When authorities arrived at the scene, Ashling was found motionless. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial assessment revealed the sheer brutality of the attack. Ashling had sustained 11 stab wounds to her neck and had been strangled, ultimately dying of blood loss. Her keys were found nearby, indicating she had fought fiercely, even attempting to use them against her assailant. Forensic experts later confirmed that she had fought so incredibly hard to get away and tried everything she could until the very end.
The Gardaí immediately launched a full-scale murder investigation. Their initial focus was on identifying the perpetrator. A key piece of evidence found at the scene was a Falcon Storm mountain bike with straight handlebars and green on the frame, believed to belong to the attacker. Witnesses provided descriptions, including a distinctive navy padded bomber jacket with unique stitching. What's crucial here, Emma, is that from the outset, the Gardaí stated there was no information suggesting the victim and her killer were known to each other, and they believed it was committed by one male acting alone.
The investigation moved quickly. Within hours of Ashling being found, a 40-year-old man was arrested based on witness descriptions. However, he was quickly released without charge. This man's life was then put in severe danger as his name and pictures were shared widely on social media, leading to death threats from armchair detectives who were convinced of his guilt despite the police clearing him. The Gardaí had to provide him with safe accommodation,
What changed everything was an unexpected lead. On January 14th, 2 days after Ashling's murder, a man walked into a hospital quite a distance from Tullamore, seeking treatment for serious cuts, bruises, and scratches to his face. He refused to explain his injuries, raising the suspicion of the healthcare workers, who promptly called the Gardaí.
This man was Josef Puška, a 31-year-old Slovakian national living in Tullamore with his family. Detectives conducted a background check, and while the specifics aren't public, it clearly raised red flags. They seized 2 vehicles, including a taxi believed to have taken him to the hospital, and searched 2 properties connected to him, one in Dublin and one just 8 minutes from the crime scene.
When interrogated in the hospital, Puška offered conflicting stories. First, he claimed he'd been attacked by a man in a blue face mask, unable to recall details due to the speed of the alleged assault. When shown a picture of Ashling, he denied ever seeing her, claiming he looked at the news but couldn't understand English.
Then a shocking turn of events. He changed his story, claiming the same masked man who attacked him also attacked Ashling. But then, as if a dam had broken, he blurted out, "I did it. I murdered. I am the murderer." He immediately was cautioned, but continued, stating, "I'm sorry, I see girl. I never see before. Knife I use for chain. When she passed, I cut her. I cut her neck. She panicked. I panicked." He even pointed to 3 puncture wounds on his stomach, wounds likely inflicted by Ashling's keys as she fought back. This confession, given with the help of a Slovakian interpreter, was later a critical piece of evidence.
This confession, remarkably, happened on January 14th, yet Puška was not officially arrested and charged until January 19th, 5 full days later. The delay was never fully explained by the police, a point of serious contention during the trial. However, the arrest occurred on the same day as a public vigil for Ashling, and the sheer timing was deeply emotional for a grieving nation.
The trial of Josef Puška finally began on October 2nd, 2023, after several delays. The prosecution presented a compelling case built on several pillars. Crucially, the DNA under Ashling's fingernails was a definitive match to Puška. This was direct physical evidence of her courageous fight and, ultimately, his presence and involvement.
And not only that, Jason, Ashling's Fitbit smartwatch data proved invaluable. Her workout started at 2:59 p.m. Around 3:21 p.m., the device tracked erratic movements, and just minutes later, at 3:31 p.m., her heartbeat was no longer being recorded. This precise timeline perfectly aligned with Puška's movements captured on CCTV footage, showing him in the area on the mountain bike that was found at the scene. The sudden and dramatic change in Ashling's heart rate pinpointed the exact moment of the attack.
The prosecution also presented evidence of Puška's predatory behavior leading up to the murder. Anne-Marie Kelly, another jogger, testified that she saw Puška on his bike staring at her in a menacing way that deeply unsettled her. She later saw him walking behind her, pushing his bike, feeling his stare, and she picked up her pace, fortunately spotting a man in a van and jogging towards him, causing Puška to flee. He was also seen on CCTV following 3 other women that day. This strongly suggested a premeditated intent to harm someone.
Puška, despite his earlier hospital confession, played not guilty, reverting to the story that he was attacked by a masked man, who then killed Ashling. He even claimed the 2 women who witnessed the attack had misinterpreted the scene, believing he was trying to stop Ashling's bleeding, not hurt her. His defense brought in an NHS emergency consultant, Dr. Johannes Grundling, who raised concerns about the reliability of Puška's hospital confession, citing his recent surgery, medication, oxycodone, unfamiliar environment, and language barrier.
However, the prosecution countered, pointing out that Puška was regularly checked by medical staff and showed no signs of disorientation, and the amount of oxycodone in his system was minimal at the time of the confession. They effectively dismantled his fabricated narrative, calling his lies foul and contemptible.
The jury also heard about the self-inflicted nature of Puska's stomach wound, a detail that contradicted his story. On November 9th, 2023, after just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Joseph Puska guilty of murder. The judge, Mr. Justice Tony Hunt, did not mince words, stating, "We have evil in this room. There is no doubt about that. There will be a day of reckoning for Puska." He agreed with the jury's swift decision, calling Puska's defense nonsense.
On November 17, 2023, Joseph Puska was handed a mandatory life sentence. Ashling's boyfriend Ryan delivered a powerful victim impact statement, telling Puska, "You have no idea the love we had for each other. Because of you, I will never get to marry my soulmate. Because of you, I have to somehow carry on without her. You smirked, you smiled, and you showed no remorse," which sums up the kind of person you are, the epitome of pure evil. The judge also noted that if he had the power, a whole life order would have been considered, emphasizing that Puska has never shown remorse or empathy and has done nothing but lie.
Jason, as a prosecutor, the DNA evidence here, particularly the sample found under Ashling's fingernails, is absolutely paramount. It's direct, undeniable, and it tells a powerful story of her final moments. She literally provided the key to identifying her killer, even in death.
Absolutely, Emma. From an investigative standpoint, that DNA was the golden thread. We talk about how critical it is for victims, even in the throes of an attack, to fight back. Ashling's actions, her desperate struggle, provided a perfect biological sample that directly linked Puska to the crime. Coupled with the Fitbit data, which gave us a real-time, minute-by-minute account of the attack, it created an almost unshakable timeline. The Fitbit was essentially a silent witness, capturing the physiological response to trauma.
And that brings us to the confession. It's fascinating how a suspect, even under duress or medication, can blurt out the truth. Puska's initial unprompted confession in the hospital, even if he later tried to retract it, holds immense weight in a courtroom, especially when corroborated by forensic evidence. The defense tried to argue coercion or impaired judgment due to medication and the language barrier, but the prosecution effectively dismantled that. The fact that he confessed twice, once explicitly, and then again by implicating himself in his bizarre masked man story, speaks volumes.
The conflicting stories from Puska were a classic move by a suspect trying to evade responsibility. The masked man narrative was, frankly, ludicrous, especially when faced with the hard science of the DNA and the objective data from the Fitbit. And the self-inflicted stomach wound? That immediately tells an experienced investigator that he was trying to account for injuries sustained during the struggle with Ashling, not some phantom attacker. It was a desperate attempt to create an alternative explanation, but it crumbled under scrutiny.
The prosecution's strategy was clearly to present an overwhelming body of evidence, leaving no room for reasonable doubt. They had the eyewitness testimony from the two women, the bike found at the scene, the extensive CCTV footage placing Puska in the vicinity and even stalking other women, the detailed Fitbit data, the undeniable DNA, and of course, his own confession. They showed Puska as a predatory individual actively seeking a victim, which helped to establish intent even if a direct motive wasn't fully clear.
What also stands out from an investigative standpoint is how quickly the Gardaí shifted focus once that hospital tip came in. They didn't get fixated on the initial, ultimately innocent suspect. They followed the new lead, piecing together fragments of information, the unexplained injuries, his evasiveness, the background check, and then the pieces started to fit. It highlights the importance of keeping an open mind and following every credible lead, no matter how unusual.
From a legal standpoint, the mandatory life sentence reflects the gravity of this crime under Irish law. There was no question of a lesser charge like manslaughter, given the evidence of a sustained, brutal attack. And the judge's comments, particularly about Puska's showing no remorse or empathy and consistently lying, are significant. While they don't impact the mandatory sentence, they certainly underscore the court's view of his character and the lack of any mitigating factors. It also sends a clear message about the impact of such crimes on victims and society.
This case, Jason, it's just heart-wrenching. Ashling Murphy was so full of life, so dedicated to her passions and her students. What truly strikes me, emotionally, is the sheer randomness of it.
and the senseless loss of such a vibrant young woman. Her family's grief, especially Ryan's statement, is just devastating. The image of her fighting back in her final moments, leaving behind the DNA, it's a testament to her courage, but it also highlights the terror she must have experienced.
It's a profound tragedy, Emma. Professionally, what makes this case stand out to me is the confluence of digital evidence and biological evidence. The Fitbit data, the DNA from under her nails, these were silent witnesses that spoke volumes. It reinforces how much our everyday technology can now aid in solving these complex cases. But beyond the technical aspects, it's the lack of discernible motive that truly haunts me. Just pure, unadulterated evil. It wasn't about robbery or sexual assault. It was simply an act of violence for violence's sake. That's a truly disturbing thought.
And what does justice mean in a situation like this? For Ashling's family, it's about acknowledging the depth of their loss and ensuring that this vicious monster, as her family called him, can never harm another woman again. The conviction and life sentence, while they can never bring Ashling back, at least provide a measure of accountability and perhaps a tiny bit of peace for those who loved her.
I agree. Justice, in this instance, is primarily about protecting society from such an individual. The community response, the vigils, the national outpouring of grief, it demonstrated a collective demand for accountability. It also sparked crucial conversations about women's safety. The idea that no woman should have to fear for her life while simply going for a jog in daylight hours.
Exactly. Laura Bates, the activist, hit the nail on the head when she spoke about the subtle victim blaming that can occur when people focus on what the victim was doing or where they were. Ashling was simply living her life. The onus is entirely on the perpetrator. This case, like those of Sarah Everard, Anna Kriesel, and Jill Mayer, highlights that the problem isn't women's behavior. It's the deeply ingrained issue of violence against women that society needs to confront and dismantle.
It's a stark reminder that even in seemingly safe environments, vigilance is still unfortunately necessary. But more importantly, it calls for a societal shift to ensure women can live without fear. Ashling's memory, through the music charities and the park bench dedication, will hopefully continue to inspire that necessary change.
The story of Ashling Murphy is a profound testament to a beautiful life tragically cut short, but also to the unyielding pursuit of justice and the power of a community united in grief and defiance. Our deepest sympathies remain with her family, her beloved Ryan, and all who had the privilege of knowing her light.
Her name will not be forgotten. Her story will continue to serve as a stark warning and a powerful call to action for a world where every woman can walk free, without fear.
We hope our conversation today has offered a thoughtful exploration of this impactful case. If you found value in our work and wish for us to continue shedding light on these important stories, please consider supporting us by liking this episode and subscribing to The Crime Couch. Your engagement helps us continue these vital discussions.
Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate.
Thank you for joining us on The Crime Couch.